joining us. We have Red Sox Ownership here to take your questions with Principal Owner John Henry, Chairman Tom Werner, and President and CEO Sam Kennedy. Before we take questions, we're going to hear some opening remarks from John Henry. John, whenever you're ready.
Good morning. This morning, before answering your questions, I'd like to begin by, and can you all hear me? No? We don't have, do we have speakers?
Yeah, we'll have someone to fix them. We do have speakers right now.
I'd like to begin by addressing Red Sox fans directly about this off-season. We're used to challenging off-seasons, but this one has been particularly challenging. So let me begin by saying that while they've been presented with an extraordinary set of challenges this off-season, those of us sitting here today know that our baseball operations department, under Chaim and Brian's leadership, has handled these challenges extremely well. We are confident and optimistic, while at the same time cognizant of how all these challenges affect you, Red Sox fans. We feel responsible to face whatever challenges arise in a way so as to protect the organization and move forward for the long term, whether it's on or off the field. Before Tom or Sam or I ever dreamed of owning a Major League Baseball club, we were baseball fans like you. I grew up a fan of the St. Louis Cardinals. My favorite player was Stan Musial. My heart would have been broken if Stan the man had ever been traded for any reason. Your parents or your grandparents surely felt the same way about Ted Williams and Yaz. So on one level, when I say I understand how many of you feel about this trade with the Dodgers, I know many of you, particularly our youngest fans, are disbelieving or angry or sad about it. I know it's difficult and disappointing. Some of you no doubt felt the same way in 2004 when we traded Nomar, who, like Mookie, was a hugely popular homegrown player. All of us in the organization hoped that we would never have to go through something like that again, but most clubs face similar dilemmas from time to time. I understand there's probably little I can say today that will change how you feel about this, but it's my responsibility to try. The baseball organizations we compete against have become much more strategic and thoughtful about how and where they spend their resources in their quest for titles. We cannot shy away from tough decisions required to aggressively compete for World Series. That is what led to this trade. Free agency plays into many decisions clubs like ours have to make. Today's players spend years in the minor and major leagues earning the right to be paid in a free market, earning the right to make choices. They make significant sacrifices to get there, and they deserve what they receive. Clubs also have choices to make in this economic system. It's a system that has a few imbalances, as do all economic systems. But it's a system overall that has led to labor peace and an amazing market for our best players. It's not the system's fault that the Red Sox ended up in this position. We were faced with a difficult choice. You can talk about dollars, you can talk about metrics and value, but in the end, even though we are consistently among the highest spending clubs in baseball, with this year being no exception, we have to make hard judgments about competing for the future as well as the present. Over the last 2 decades in winning 4 titles, along the way we lost not only Nomar, but Pedro and Jacoby and John and Manny, among others. We no longer live in the Musial or Williams era. players have rights they should have had when Stan and Ted played. Those two great players were victims of an unfair system, one that gave them no choice but to stay put. At one point, Stan thought about going to Mexico in order to be paid his value. He was offered $175,000 over 5 years to play in the Mexican League when he was making $13,500 a year. The Cardinal owner went to Mexico to try to stop it. In today's game, there's a cost to losing a great player to free agency, one that cannot nearly be made up by the draft pick given. We've seen examples of this recently. We at the Red Sox will remember this as one of the toughest, one of the most difficult decisions we've ever had to make. We too love the young man, the great, great smile, the huge heart, and the seemingly boundless talent he displayed here. We felt we could not sit on our hands and lose him this next offseason without getting value in return to help us on our path forward. We carefully considered the alternative over the last year and made a decision when this opportunity presented itself to acquire substantial young talent for the years ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, John. So at this time, we can open questions. Just raise your hand. The microphone, so just raise your hand. We'll call. Sorry, Dan in the front.
So I bring a question from Johnny Miller, who's in the hospital, and he wants to say hello, and he gets the first question. So this is John. You've addressed some of it. You know, Johnny says the fans are irate about the Betts trade. Is there any reason they are wrong, and how is this not a salary dump?
Yeah, well, it's understandable that people could view this transaction as a way to rid yourself of some salary obligations that goes along with it. But as John mentioned, it was a determination that we needed to make as we went into the conversations with Mookie and his representatives. We had a hard decision to make, and we decided that it was in the best interest of the baseball operation to go forward with this transaction to get substantial value back in exchange for two great players. And there is an economic system that we all operate under, and there are clearly certain advantages by resetting and getting under. But we've tried to be clear that this was not exclusively about the CBT and getting under that CBT threshold. There would have been other ways to have done that. You don't trade Mookie Betts to get under the CBT. We traded Mookie Betts and David Price and got back significant value in return. And as John said, we know it's painful. We know it hurts. We're baseball fans first and foremost, and we understand that there's disappointment, there's anger, and now it's our job to continue to do what we've done for the last 19 years here, and that's make every effort to win a World Series championship. We want our 5th championship. We're hungry for it, and this is the group that has been together for 2 decades working towards that goal each and every year.
John, would you identify this as a baseball trade or a trade about finances to your fans?
A baseball trade.
And I think it's hard for them to get their heads around, you know, Mookie Betts and David Price for 3 guys they've never heard of, one of whom has a stress fracture in his back. I mean, do you understand fans being questioning and irate about that?
Yes.
What should we tell them to do?
I said my piece. I don't know. If
I think that
anybody
we,
else-
you know, obviously this is young talent who we have a lot of optimism for. My understanding is that hopefully he'll be playing very shortly after the Alex will be playing very shortly after the season starts. But we've acquired talent that will be under club control for I think 17 years, and I think that we have to wait and see whether or not the evaluations of Heim and our baseball people are accurate. But I've talked to a lot of people outside this organization who are very enthusiastic about the talent that we've received.
Okay, Jude.
Do you believe you guys are going to lose Mookie in the offseason?
We didn't know. We weren't sure if a deal that in Chaim and BOH and the men and women in baseball operations decided was going to be valuable enough to go ahead and make a deal. So we didn't know, and conversations progressed throughout the course of the offseason. Obviously, we ended up consummating a transaction, but we weren't sure what would happen.
How would you respond to fans who say that a team with financial resources of the Red Sox trading a homegrown MVP like Mookie is bad for baseball?
Well, we certainly understand, because we love coming to the ballpark every day and watching Mookie Betts on and off the field. So we understand, and we hear them. We're engaged in talking to our fans, whether it's season ticket holders, sponsors, community partners. And what we would tell them is, look, we have an obligation and a responsibility to put an competitive team on the field each and every season. We're trying to do that in 2020. We believe we have a team that can compete for a playoff spot. Ron Renicky addressed the club this morning and talked a lot about that. So we'd ask our fans to stay with us and get behind this club in 2020. No one is waving the white flag, but we need to go out and do it on the field, and that's what these guys will be prepared to do.
Sam, you more than anybody, the last several years, has talked about growing the game in kids. That seems to be a pet project of yours. I've seen your name attached to that a million times. And yet you traded away a player who was enormously popular with kids, the nickname, the talent, and so forth. Were there discussions, concerns about losing, I won't say a generation of kids, but a couple of years worth of kids who won't be as attracted to the product with him gone?
Absolutely, yes. Yeah, if you're parting ways with Mookie Betts, not only does that hurt your ability to compete in the present year, but it also hurts your ability to market one of the most important players in our game. But we made the tough decision to do it because of the value that we're getting back in return, and because of how we think this sets us up to win our 5th World Series championship. And I can tell you, as a kid who grew up 1 mile from Fenway Park, the concept of being in a position to hopefully someday soon win our 5th World Series championship I'm not sure that's a concept I could have got my head around. So as a Red Sox fan, we want a winning, competitive club that is built to win multiple World Series championships as we go forward. And under the Henry Werner administration, over the last 19 years, we've won 4 times, and we're hungry for more. And I think kids and families appreciate that. They understand that this is an ownership group that has completely and totally changed the culture of the Boston Red Sox and built it into one of the preeminent franchises in all of Major League Baseball because of the commitment to winning.
You view that this trade sets you up financially to pursue Mookie next winter in free agency? Do you think that you'll be able to try to go after him among the other teams that'll be wanting?
Yeah, we can't talk about a player with another organization, but if you look back to 2002, the Red Sox have been in the top 5 of payroll. This club will have a payroll at or above $200 million. These guys have never, ever shied away from spending when appropriate, when strategic, for trying to win in October.
Lou on the left.
So Red Sox fans might look at it and say, this guy's such a great player, just pay the man whatever he wants. I'm wondering, in the last year or two, was there a point where you looked at it, you got too uncomfortable with maybe what he was looking for, you just realized that it wasn't going to happen, and that risk, the offseason, is going to turn more into, basically, you know what's going to happen because you're not willing to pay that?
Well, Lou, this trade gives us a lot of flexibility going forward. And we've been in this position before. John alluded to the trade we made with when we traded Nomar. We have made unpopular trades. They haven't all turned out right, but hopefully, we'll look at this trade and see the benefits of it as time goes on. We have made and did make repeated. We had repeated conversations with Mookie over a number of years to try to hold on to him for the length of his baseball career, and they just they didn't work out. But we also understand, as John said, that in the short run, this is going to be painful. It's painful for us, but it does give us flexibility.
Dan on the right.
When did you, how close did you come to signing Mookie? Was there ever a point where you came close? And when did you just, was it a month ago, was it 2 months ago, you just decided that it was time to move on? And did you address it, did anyone address it with the players this morning?
Not going to comment on specific negotiations other than to say that Mookie and his representatives definitely knew of our desire to try and make Mookie Betts a part of the Red Sox family for life. That's for sure. And so we'll leave it at that. And again, express our gratitude. He leaves Boston a World Series champion, an MVP, a great person, and a great player. And as it relates to the decision to sort of move on, that wasn't made until the deal was consummated. Because again, there was a lot of back and forth with the different clubs involved, and we really weren't sure until the very end that a deal would actually happen.
Did you address it at all this morning in the address to the players?
No.
Sean on the right.
For John and Tom, at the end of the season, you talked about it being a goal, not a mandate, to get under the CBT for this season, and further added that had been known to you for more than a year. Given that, why green light the spending that went on after last off-season, including $213 million to two pitchers with some durability issues, knowing that Mookie was coming to free agency and that this was going to be something you needed to confront?
Well, are you saying, well, first of all, we made those decisions on those pitchers before these conversations. As we've said, we were hoping.
If I may, you did say, we've known for more than a year, was the quote from John,
Right.
about being under the CBT. That was last September.
But we've also said, Sean, that was a goal, not a mandate. We have been under the CBT some of our years. We've been over the CBT in some of our years. And the more important issue for us is what is it that we can do to make the Red Sox strong in 2020, 2021, 2022. These decisions, there are lots of hypotheticals here. We are pleased with the value that we got back from the Dodgers. We might not be having this discussion. We might have proceeded under different sort of scenarios, but we are where we are based on the proposal that we agreed to.
Pete.
You guys have spoken about the value you received back from the Dodgers. How much debate was there in comparison to that, and how much value would have been to have Mookie for another season, and weighing those two against each other?
That was certainly a big consideration.
How closely do you feel those values are to each other?
Better question for baseball ops.
And the other thing I wanted to ask, all three of you have talked about being good baseball fans. How concerned are you that Mookie Betts leaving your organization is going to be part of your legacy, along with the championships and the other things that you've done, that you let this homegrown superstar player get away?
Yeah. As I said, we faced this in 2004, I believe. Very similar situation, and we're charged with having to do, making tough decisions, and having to do what we think is in the best interest of the club for the long term, not just this season.
Buster in the back left.
Just to follow up on what Lou and Dan asked, you hear from a lot of fans, they wonder if at some point you guys went to Mookie and said, hey, we love you, what's it gonna take? And that you got that number in front of you and made a decision based off of that.
Buster, I'm not sure what exactly the question was, sorry.
Was there at any point when you guys were talking with Mookie's camp, did you guys get a number from his camp, this is what it's gonna take, and then
I
make
see.
your decision at that point? 'Cause
Yeah.
That's what a lot of fans wanna know based on, the Red Sox and your resources.
Yeah, I think it would be wholly inappropriate to discuss any specifics of a negotiation of a contract with a player. So we just will reiterate that we made it clear from our perspective that we wanted Mookie a part of our organization for his entire playing career, and unfortunately we weren't able to get something done. And you know, again, we thank him for everything he did.
Ken, back right.
Speaking of being fans of the game, over the last couple of days, a number of players have spoken out about the possibility of retaliation against the Astros, including your star pitcher. Are you going to speak to the players about that? Would it bother you if you saw it? Would it be good for the game?
Well, Ron Renneke spoke with the commissioner yesterday about this very issue, and that's obviously an issue for the clubhouse. But no, players should not be throwing at each other, throwing at batters. That's not helpful to the situation. Puts players in harm's way, and I hope we don't see that.
Tara on the right.
Part of Mookie Betts' popularity wasn't limited to him on the field. You know, people loved him off the field, personality, his charitable work. The player who's the primary piece that's coming back, Alex Verdugo, has some very troubling history, if you read the reports at least that were published about involvement in a sexual assault case while in the minor leagues. What level of due diligence did you do? What level of concern is that? And why are you willing to take that on?
Well, I
You want me
can address just that we did an extremely high level of due diligence with Major League Baseball and with the Los Angeles Dodgers, and I actually spoke to the commissioner directly about it myself, and we are comfortable with the decision. Otherwise, we would not have moved forward in that direction. Had a chance to meet Alex in person this morning and let him know that the entire organization is here to support him and all of our players. And so we're comfortable with the level of due diligence that we did.
Any chance it included tracking down the woman in question?
No, we did not track down the woman in question.
Tom Karen in the middle.
Between the initial reports of the trade and the confirmation of about a week there, two questions there. Was there ever a point that you thought the trade might not happen, and in the end, were you happy with the value you got compared to maybe what the value originally was?
I think until a trade is consummated, you don't have a deal. So you always are wondering, it doesn't matter whether it's in baseball or outside of baseball, until you actually have a signed deal, it's not done. So yes, there were times where it could have fallen apart. What was the second part of the question?
Just happy with the end value,
Yeah.
has it changed over the course of that week, what you ultimately got in return?
We were happy with the return, yes.
Okay, Butch in the back.
Yeah, just to follow up, maybe Sam, can you comment on, in general, why the original trade didn't happen?
No, can't comment on the original trade. It was unfortunate that it's hard in baseball because so much goes into a trade, and a lot of information gets out there that's either inaccurate or maybe originally had been part of a deal or a discussion. And a lot of times we have to just be quiet and sit on our hands and wait for a trade to go through. So it's unfortunate stuff got out there, but don't want to comment on the specifics of trades that did not happen.
Chris, no.
For John, considering kind of the whole offseason, you guys have been trying to change the narrative about the CBT and kind of make it seem like a media-driven thing. Do you regret saying that so publicly at the end of September?
No, you have to be honest with the media, you have to be honest with the fans, so no.
June in the middle.
Do you think there's anything the team could have done before the 2019 season that would have prevented having to trade Mookie this offseason?
Absolutely.
Do you have examples?
We could have signed him to a long-term contract. But short of that, I'm not sure what the answer is.
Dan in the
So
middle.
John, like last week when Chaim talked to us, he said, we expect that we're going to be worse without them, Mookie and David. So as the owner, how do you tell your fans that this is not a bridge year?
Well, I mean, I read that. I also think that Chaim has said that he believes we're going to be very competitive this year. We hope that he's right. We sat here a year ago with a team that had won the World Series, and we thought that we were going to get into postseason, and we didn't. I think everybody in this room would say that baseball is somewhat inscrutable at times. I'm looking forward to this season. He may have said that last week, but I also think that Chaim believes that we have the pieces to be very competitive and get into postseason, and I'm looking forward to seeing how it plays out.
Don't you think this would be a record payroll for a bridge year?
Okay.
Yeah, one of the benefits of these jobs is you go around, you talk to your counterparts at the other 29 clubs, and you walk into the room and they sort of roll their eyes and say, yeah, we'd love to, have your challenges or your issues. And Dan, I think Chaim was very clear that the club is built to compete in the American League East, but yes, it's no doubt harder to get to that ultimate goal when you lose a player like Mookie Betts. No one debates that. But we are now in a position with newfound resources, newfound flexibility, and a club that only won 84 games last year that we felt underperformed. So we do think we're in a position, while more challenging, we do think we're in a position in the American League East to compete, given the players that we have on our roster and given the resources that we do have.
And some fans have come back to us and said, is the team going to do anything about rolling back the ticket price increase? Has there been any consideration to doing anything back to the fans after this?
Yeah, we've taken a very consistent approach to, over the last 4 or 5 years, of a very modest ticket price increase. And I'm actually glad you brought it up, because I mentioned publicly the other day that we are pacing behind in ticket sales. There's been a big focus on affordability, and there's actually a misconception still in the market that tickets aren't available, that every single game at Fenway Park is sold out. That's not the case. There are tickets available for our games in April and May. For Tier 5 games, in terms of our pricing schedule, 60% of those tickets are priced at under $40. We have tickets for students, college kids, high school kids, middle school kids for every single game at $9. So come to Fenway Park for $9. You may get standing room tickets, you may get field box seats, loge box seats. We have affordable family options, $99 for a family of 4, which includes 4 tickets, includes food and beverage. We understand the commitment that our fan makes, and every single dollar that our fans invest into tickets, food, beverage at Fenway Park goes back into our baseball operation. That's important that our fans understand that connection. I know they do. But there are affordable tickets for Red Sox games this season, and we want to make sure that we get that message out there.
About a month ago, when you parted ways with Alex, I think all three of you said that you were confident that any investigation would not impugn the championship of 2018. The commissioner said last night that the investigation is going to continue for at least another 2 weeks. It seems like that deadline has been pushed up several times. Since a month ago when you said that, is there any concern about what MLB is going to find with the Red Sox in 2018?
I think if there's one thing we learned from the Astros investigation is that the Major League Baseball is extraordinarily thorough when they do an investigation. So it's not overly surprising that it's not done yet. But I don't think anything from our standpoint, I don't think anything has changed.
You're no more concerned today than you were.
Was that a month ago, really?
Wow.
But I don't think anything has changed.
And can you say, I guess all three of you, if you've been interviewed by Major League Baseball on this investigation?
I have,
We have not.
Have not.
Okay, we're gonna take a few more before we separate for scrums, but Rob, right in the middle.
John, a year ago, you said you have regrets about messing up the John Lester scenario. You just talked about Mookie Betts making him offers. Looking back at those offers leading up to this, do you have any regrets at what level you came in regards to Mookie Betts?
no, I think that we made legitimate offers over 3 off seasons, but I really don't want to, I'll follow Sam's point and not get into what happened. But what we made clear to Mookie, I made it personally clear to him one-on-one, that we wanted to see him in a Red Sox uniform for the rest of his life if possible. But as I went through in my opening statement, we live in a different world today, and players spend so many years being underpaid in the system that we have, that when they get to free agency, they have they've earned the right to maximize their chances of being paid a maximal amount.
Some more, Chris?
Sam, do you have a estimate or percentage on how much ticket sales are down at this point compared to last year at this point?
Yeah, we're pacing down a little bit more than 15% behind. Some of that is demand and some of it is pace of sale. We'll see as we get into March and April where that number shakes out. On the season ticket holder front, we're usually in the high 80s in terms of a renewal rate, 88, 89%. We anticipate finishing our season ticket renewals this year in the low 80s, maybe 80, 82%. So down, we anticipated that, and it's incumbent upon us to work hard to make sure that fans, when they come to Fenway, have a great experience and want to come back. So our ticketing group that has been together for 19 years knows exactly what the mission is, and that's to pack Fenway night in and night out, because it really is a competitive advantage. So to the extent that people haven't been to games at Fenway, please come on out and support this team. There is definitely a mindset, you could feel it this morning, of having an edge or a little bit of a chip on their shoulder. I think we have some things to prove this year, and I think that'll be fun for fans to watch.
Last one, Lou, on the left.
So you said trading Mookie wasn't about being under the CBT, but the inclusion of David Price, was that more about guaranteeing that you would achieve that goal, that side of the goal?
Well, that again, that was a decision that Heim and Baseball Ops made. That we felt that again, people have said that we traded 3 players. We traded 1 player for 3, but we've actually traded 2, and we feel that we're supportive of Heim's recommendation there.